Have a good time.
Check, check, check.
What's up, Rob?
Hey, what's going on?
Long time, man.
Yeah.
How you been?
See ya. Good.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Congrats on the not so new job.
Yeah, thanks.
It's good to see you back.
Come on over. Yeah, ask me. I appreciate that.
Check, 2, 3.
Okay. Roll call. Oh, yeah. Should have checked that they were here. I was watching us eat. Lauren, are you doing roll call?
Sorry, they're saying they can't hear it.
Oh, okay. Oh, I can't hear them either, huh?
Can you hear us, guys?
Can you hear us yet? We can't hear you.
No word yet. Wrong.
Well, we're the quorum.
Okay, there we go.
That's true. So they'll get as far as roll call.
Can
All these
you,
other people are here. They just haven't. You know,
okay,
if you patch everybody in,
Are the cameras, can they not see us?
can you hear us?
Lauren's there.
Oh, I can't hear us.
Well, that's the camera that had us on the last meeting.
And it's got her picture of a snowy pathway.
They'll figure it out. They can't do anything without us.
Can you hear us now?
I can hear you.
Oh, that we figured it out. Okay. All right, so can everybody hear each other? Raise your hand. Okay. Roll call. Lauren.
Director Dyven,
Here.
Director Stevens,
Here.
Director Odette,
Here.
Director Hetherington. Here. And Director Rolfe.
Here. Okay, welcome to the regular meeting. We had a closed session earlier this afternoon and nothing to report out from closed session. Special orders of business. We need to adopt Resolution 2023-01, authorizing remote public meetings.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2023-01, authorizing remote public meetings.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call?
Director Dyven,
Yes.
Director Stevens,
Yes.
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Rolfe.
Yes.
We can't see you guys.
Oh,
Rory?
okay.
We can hear you.
Well, all right, we'll try to get that fixed. Seem to be having technical difficulties. While they're working that out, I'll go ahead and say, for modification of the agenda, does anybody have any modifications? We're going to pull item number 8. We just don't have enough information to get into that today. Does anybody else have any modifications? Okay. All right. I'm going to read the norms of Speak Your Piece. Okay, first of all, pay attention. Be aware and attend to the world and the people around you. Listen, focus on others in order to better understand their points of view. Be inclusive. Welcome all groups of citizens
Recording in progress.
working for the greater good of the community. Uh-oh. Feedback. Don't gossip and don't accept when others choose to do so. Show respect, honor other people.
Not hearing anything now.
Oh, shoot. Oh, it got muted again. Oh, boy.
Rory. Oh, it's not Rory?
That's not Rory.
Oh, bummer.
Is the mute still on this one, on their screen?
I muted it, so we're not getting.
Oh, so they're not getting, okay.
just so everybody knows, we got sick people, and so we're really glad they're not here.
Did it work earlier during your closed session, and this is a new problem, or?
Yeah, it worked fine,
Yes, we're silenced at 80 and
but
We talked.
I move we adjourn.
Three sections, four. There's two panels. My head is and then the third panel. The first two rows come on. First ladder. Yeah, kind of like back. Yeah.
Yeah, she was looking at it.
Yeah, we gotta talk about that. Sure. I mean, I'm actually Stacy. Somebody's gonna polycon. She's got a test drive.
Next meeting, you'll be able to hear from this, none of the participants or anybody who wants to make public comment will be able to.
I can't do that.
Could we set up a hot talk for people to make public comment? They just have to open a public comment in this location.
Rachel.
Right here.
It's all already ready. All right, we'll go back.
Especially with that name.
I know.
See if that works. So it's the sound coming from your laptop. It's muted? Yeah. Apologize, we'll get this fixed real quick, sorry.
Yeah, mine works.
They've been dragged down, so we can push the bottom. Well, she can't use it. She,
Oh, no, you're right.
I just, you don't want. People are forcing around.
Yeah.
Moving them around for sure. Hey, Sean. Good, how are you? Oh, yeah, no worries. Nice to meet you. I just need to see you last week. You should forget that not all schools are traffic nearby. We were only speeding like 3 hours a day. You go.
You got your
down the
workout.
vertical, normally you're
Yeah.
screaming and there's no lift. You're in your chair and.
Yeah. Sometimes it's all too. I was, it's like, wondering more
she's high school career. That's what I was.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
We're good.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, let's proceed. What was that?
Can you see us now? No.
Oh, okay. We're good to go. Thank you. Continue.
Can't see you, but can hear you.
Do we want to try to fix the camera? Or should we just limp along?
I say we limp along.
Okay.
If the public can see that what they need to see, then
Could turn on your television, I guess, and go to that.
Can you guys see us?
We can see you. Yeah.
That's good to know.
Is that a plus?
I'm really glad to see Rick alive and kicking.
Well, at least I'm alive. I'm not sure about kicking.
Okay, we'll keep going with reading the speak your piece. Don't gossip and don't accept when others choose to do so. Show respect, honor other people and their opinions, especially in the midst of a disagreement. Be agreeable. Look for opportunities to agree. Don't contradict just to do so. Apologize. Be sincere and repair damaged relationships. Give constructive criticism. Stick to the issues and don't make it a personal attack. Take responsibility. Don't shift responsibility and blame onto others. Share disagreements publicly. All right. Now is the time for public comment. And I'll just remind anyone who was going to wait and comment on number 8 on the agenda, since we pulled it, now would be the time for you to make a public comment. Do you have any public comment of anything not on the agenda? Nope. Okay. All right. Oh,
Somebody has public comment.
is somebody trying? Okay.
John Harris.
He's connecting to audio right
Did he raise his hand?
now. Yeah, he's trying to connect to audio.
Oh, okay. Great.
John, do you have a public comment?
No? Okay. All right. Consent agenda. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I just was, in the minutes, I talked to Rob and catching a wrap up at the end of all the minutes. That's my only issue.
Can I pause you for 1 second? We hear Kat loud and clear, and I barely hear Mary at all.
Can you hear me now?
Better, but if somehow we could hear you like we're hearing Kat, that would be ideal.
Okay, I'll just put it closer.
Perfect.
Okay. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent action items, the minutes, the monthly service bills and fees, and policy instruction 110.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Stevens,
Yes.
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Rolfe.
Yes. Okay, special presentation. This is board member training with Josh Nelson, our district council. Hopefully, everybody can hear him.
Thanks, President Roll. Just confirming that everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, and then
We
if,
hear
if
you, but we can't see, so if there's
It-
stuff for us to see, we're not gonna see it.
we're pulling up the slides now, and so I'll pause before I get started just to make sure that everyone can see the slides. Because I'm gonna need to see them as well. Yeah.
They can't see the cameras because channel 18 doesn't have these cameras on. To Zoom.
If they can't see this, should this be rolled to next month?
Yes, let's see if we can get the presentation up, and if we can't, then I would request we defer it, just because it's important. And I didn't distribute the slides in advance. So.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I just texted him to share his screen.
Hey, we can see that.
Perfect.
Oh, great.
Thanks. So, as was mentioned, this is sort of the annual, best practices type training that we've scheduled. We had a session in August and then decided to kind of do it annually. So we're doing it the first meeting of 2023. Next slide, please. So, kind of follow the same format we did in August, but didn't want to just sort of rehash what we had just done. So we'll talk a lot about the same concepts, but from a slightly different angle. Before we kind of dive into the roles of the board versus directors and the role of the board versus staff, wanted to do just a brief reminder of the minimal legal requirements with a special focus on the new remote meeting rules under AB 2449. As a reminder, and as we'll talk about, the very flexible rules that we're currently operating are anticipated to go away at the end of February with the rescission of the statewide COVID-19 emergency. Next slide, please. So before we get started, just a reminder about kind of the purpose of the training. Kind of already focused on that. I think the big takeaway is the very last bullet point there, and the one that's sort of highlighted with an exclamation point. This is really intended to be sort of a conversation, hopefully, with the board and staff, just to kind of talk through these issues. And so, if you have questions, stop me, and let's talk about it. Next slide, please. All right. So before we dive into that, just a reminder on the legal requirements. It's important that the board of directors and therefore the district itself, acts in compliance with our enabling statute. I think a good way of thinking about it is sort of our constitution. So if the airport district act says we can do it, or another law says we can do it, we can do it. And if it doesn't say that we can do it, or it's silent on the issue, odds are we can't do it. That being said, there are a number of procedural requirements that apply to local agencies when they're sort of conducting their business. And for the board, the most important for us is the Brown Act. So, under the Brown Act, all of our meetings need to comply with the transparency and open government laws, and certainly make sure we do that. In addition to that, and continuing the theme of transparency, we're required to comply with the Public Records Act, which ensures that any member of the public, with some exceptions depending on the type of information, is entitled to ask us for anything related to the airport, and we provide it under the timelines provided under the PRA. Specific to the board and staff, there are some requirements when you're making decisions which might affect financial interests that you have, and some conflict of interest requirements. The two most important are the Political Reform Act, which part of which requires you to file your Form 700 each year, and generally prevents you from participating in decisions which affect your financial interests, as well as Government Code Section 1090. Government Code Section 1090 is an older statute and a little bit broader and blunter. And what it says is that public officials, which include staff and consultants in some situations, cannot be financially interested in contracts made on their behalf. The idea being that it's impossible to be on both sides of the deal. Next slide, please. So that's sort of the overview. But I did want to spend a little bit of time, like we had mentioned, to talk about AB 2449 and the remote meeting requirements. As mentioned, the very flexible rules that we're operating under are anticipated to sunset at the end of February if the governor rescinds the COVID-19 statewide declaration of emergency. In that case, new legislation, which took effect January 1st, will allow directors to participate from a private meeting location without making that meeting location a public meeting location. There are some very strict rules on participating in a public meeting under AB 2449. I think some of the important ones are noted on the slide. The first is individual directors must satisfy a just cause or emergency standard to do so. Just cause is defined very specifically in the Act, but it includes things like caring for a child or another family member, a contagious illness, a disability, or travel for the district or another state or local agency. Importantly, that does not include vacation or business or private travel or obligations. It's limited to those four categories. Emergency is, largely a medical emergency. Directors are limited to the number of times per year that they're permitted to utilize these provisions to appear from a private location. Under the just cause, you can do it 2 per calendar year. And overall, you can do it not more than 20% of our regular meetings or for 3 consecutive months. Another requirement, which is unique to these standards, is that there is a limitation on the number of directors that can participate remotely in any meeting that's subject to AB 2449. Specifically, 3 directors must be physically in this room if any single director is using that requirement. I think on this point, it's important to note that this requirement is actually stricter than the normal teleconference rules, which allow all 5 of you to participate from a remote meeting location, which is open to the public as long as a quorum are participating from locations within the jurisdictional boundaries of the district. Lastly, one other note on this requirement for directors is there's actually the bill actually requires directors to participate in the meeting if they're doing so remotely by audio and video. So under AB 361 or under the teleconference rules, it's by audio or video. This one requires a camera as well as sound.
So a question.
Please.
So if we were on the March meeting, we would have to cancel this meeting because 3 are gone.
That's correct. Unless we posted, yep, that's correct.
Okay. And since
Can't hear you, Mary.
since we can see them on this video, but they can't see us, how does that affect?
The short answer is, I don't think that the legislation contemplates being unable to view the physical location on audio and video. But my initial take would be that we would not be moving forward with the meeting if we weren't able to see this room with video, because I think the assumption with the audio and video is that all directors are visible. But that I have to admit is something that's a little bit of a nuance that isn't completely specified in the legislation. Thank you. Any other questions before we dive into the best practices portion?
Yeah, Josh, I have a question. Just for clarification, the word private here, is this what's different than the remote meeting, the other remote meeting laws, where we were able to dial in and we would to post the agenda and make it a public location?
That's exactly right, Director Diamond. And those older rules, the traditional teleconference rules, they're still in effect. So if you know, for example, that you're going to be on vacation and you would like to participate from your vacation location, you just need to make sure you're coordinating with Lauren and Rob in advance, and we can get that location posted as a public location, and it would be listed on the agenda. The agenda would be posted there, and if someone wished to provide public comment from that location, they'd have the ability to do so.
And then is that exempt from the 3 directors in person and limited number of times?
Unfortunately, it's not subject to the limited number. So there is no numerical limitation under those rules, but you can't mix and match, if that makes sense. So if you mix and match a traditional teleconference and an AB 2449, the 3 directors in person requirement would apply. So it wouldn't be possible, as an example, for, let's say, 2 directors were anticipating calling in from under traditional teleconference, and then one of the directors who was supposed to be in person got sick the day of the meeting. That director who was ill would be unable to call in from a private location and would need to likely not attend the meeting, or we would have to reschedule the entire meeting.
Understood. Thank you.
So there wouldn't be 3 people in the room, but because the other 2 had made arrangements, it would be acceptable.
It'd be acceptable to move forward with the 4 directors, excluding the one who was ill. Alternatively, if all 5, we wanted to make sure everyone had the opportunity to participate, we'd need to reschedule because we wouldn't have 3 in the room. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Next slide. Kind of 2 big categories we'll talk about on roles and responsibilities. The first is roles as between directors. So, basically the role of an individual director and the role of the board as a collective body. And then we'll talk about the role of the board and staff. As a reminder, decisions of the board are made by the board as a body and not by individual directors. Along those lines, ideally decisions are made by consensus and by a majority, voting if necessary. Individual directors are just one of 5 of that entire body. And with the exception of the president, who has some specific roles in our policies, each one of you, whether whichever role you serve in, is quote unquote equal to the others. Stated differently, this isn't like the U.S. or some big cities where the mayor or the president has a special executive role. Here, the president is a member of the legislative body and one of the 5. Next slide. I think one of the hardest things to do in many ways is to act on a committee or a body like this. I think anytime you've served in that capacity, it's just a very unique situation, and along those lines, it's totally appropriate, and I think probably required that you're going to disagree on policy. I think everyone comes in with their unique perspective. That's why you were all elected by the voters, and that's okay. But in discussing and debating the policy direction for the board, it's really important to, avoid any sort of personal attacks on people. And I know we do our speak your piece at the beginning of each meeting. I think that's a good reminder of the importance on focusing on issues and not personalities. Another thing to note, and it's in our policy, is to avoid quote unquote voting blocks. One of the questions sometimes we'll get on this is, well, what's a voting block? Directors A, B, and C are always, or A, B, C, and D are voting the same way, so that's a voting block. And I would say that's not the case necessarily. It is normal, and I think maybe almost just a matter of what happens when you have these sort of, you get 5 folks together is individual directors, you're likely to find someone who has similar views of you, and you're likely to vote the same way as that person because you have a similar perspective. That's totally appropriate, right? I mean, that's okay. Where you might, cross the line into, a voting block that I'd recommend you consider avoiding would be, not voting on an issue because that's how you feel, but voting on an issue because your other director, Director A, they're in favor of this, and so you're in favor of this because Director A is, not because you necessarily are. And I think, that's a really important distinction, and it's a distinction that only exists in each of your minds when you're making a decision, right? So if you're making a decision because you think it's the right thing to do, and other directors agree with you, and you generally agree with those other directors, in my opinion, that's completely appropriate and part of your job. By contrast, when you're making that decision on how to vote on an issue, you're doing so because you want to be part of that team or that group, that might be a voting block and something you might want to reconsider. You kind of talked about this, but it really is important to kind of find a way to work together as a collective body, and one of the slides one of the bullet points I added when I was, kind of going through this, and one that I really wanted to emphasize, is how important it is for the board to set the tone for the whole district. I think, folks that are tuning in from the community or staff, they're seeing how the board's interacting. They're seeing how the board's interacting with each other, and I've seen some agencies out there, they do a really great job of this, and it really sets a tone for the whole agency. And then I think we've all seen, on YouTube or local news or other types of boards, which may be, a little bit less collegial than that. And that also sets the tone. And it really does, in my opinion, tend to filter down to staff and then to the community at large. Next slide. So, when you're, kind of deciding on how to vote on an issue, or how to, what issues to focus on, and you're kind of setting the policy strategy session and guidance for the district, I think it's important to distinguish between a policymaker and an advocate. And I would, suggest that effective boards are made up of policymakers and not advocates. And the distinction there I'm trying to make is a policymaker is somebody who is going to make an informed decision based on the evidence presented to them that represents the community as a whole. So I think we all come from parts of the community. We bring our individual perspectives that got us here and got us elected. But when you're sitting in that seat, it's important to remember that you're not representing the stakeholder group that you maybe have came from, but the community as a whole. Next slide. All right. So before I go on to the director versus staff, were there any questions or comments just about the board versus individual directors, or any of those issues? Okay. So now kind of pivot to directors versus staff, and I kind of like to distinguish this between the what and the how. So next slide. So the board is the what. You're telling your staff what we're going to do. These are the priorities of the district. This is what we want to see accomplished. This is the areas of emphasis, and this is the order of priority of those areas of emphasis. As directors, individual directors, you're representing the voters, and as a board as a whole, going through the process we just had talked about in our previous slides, you're going to debate and create policy. You're going to set the priorities for the district. You're going to make the rules through policy that we all agree to live by, and that you're going to hold staff accountable. You're going to select the general manager and the general counsel, and the general manager, really sets the tone for staff, because all of their staff is accountable to him. One of the most important, ways in which you provide areas of emphasis and decide what we're going to do and how we're going to do it is focusing on budgeting and fiscal sustainability. And with the exception of areas that you've delegated to the general manager, all expenditure of funds are ultimately the board's, at the board's direction. All right, next slide. All right, so staff's responsible for the how. So after they know what we're here to accomplish, their job is to find the best way for you to get there, and then to accomplish that. Through that process, it's important that staff is informing and educating the board on what's going on, providing an opportunity, an environment for you to make the decisions you need to make. So, you have the information you need, you're kept up to speed, staff is laying out the options, providing potentially a recommendation on those options, and providing you with what you need to make those tough decisions. They're implementing the policy that you've identified. They're making your priorities a reality, and then both as part of that, but also separately, staff is making sure that on a day-to-day basis, the district is operating in just the basic operational requirements. Next slide. So kind of wanted to provide a couple of examples of some of the concepts we've been talking about. So here's an example that's, you have a situation where you as a director receive a request from a stakeholder for a pet project, which is not aligned with the district's adopted strategic plan, which you participated in. Staff is recommending against it. Here, best practice, resist the urge to move that project forward. Sometimes, it's important to remember that even if that's necessarily potentially politically unpopular, it maybe is the right thing to do from both a board perspective for the reasons we had talked about, but also, and I think perhaps more importantly, an organizational perspective. Staff, again, not saying this is what's happened at this agency, but in other agencies I've seen, staff has limited bandwidth. There's only so many things they can get done in a year or a day or a month. And if you have really important priorities that you've laid out in a strategic plan, if they get caught chasing individual pet projects, it distracts from their ability to accomplish what the board as a collective body has decided is the core important issues for that year. Next slide. And just because I can't help but talking about myself, I also wanted to throw in the role of the general counsel and kind of how I fit into the staff bucket. So I consider it to be my job to provide you with sound and ethical legal advice, both to the board as well as to staff. Represent the district as appropriate in dealings with third parties or courts, so both transactional and litigation issues. And to provide guidance to the board and the staff to make sure we're complying with the law to accomplish our goals without undue risk. It doesn't mean no risk, right? I think anytime you do anything in this world, there's going to be risk, but without undue risk and with making sure that the district understands whatever risk might be included in the decision that you're deciding to move forward with. Next slide.
So just for clarity too, you work for the board, you don't work for staff. You work, but your actual direct report is to the board.
Exactly, and just to emphasize that, Mary, I think on the next slide, important to remember that under the ethical rules that I'm required to follow, my client is technically the entity, the district itself. It's not an individual staff member. It's not an individual director. It's the entity. Based on that, at the end of the day, my direction comes from the governing body of the board. So, whatever the majority or consensus of the board, where that direction is, that's where I'm going to move forward. And of course, my position is one of the positions that's directly hired and fired by the board. Another question that can come up in this is, well, what about attorney-client privilege or confidentiality? Who's responsible for holding that? And it's very clear that the holder of the privilege is the board as a collective body. So if an individual director wants to make some advice that I provided public, he or she doesn't have the ability to do that without the consent of two of the other directors. All of that being said, and I take my role very seriously, I think it's important to remember that on a practical basis, from day to day, I'm going to work very closely with staff to help them implement what the board has laid out as the direction that they'd like to move forward. And I consider Rob and me and the rest of your department heads, the rest of your staff as a team that works together to try to accomplish what the board would like to move forward, while recognizing that I have a slightly different, I have a slightly special relationship with the board, and that I'm a direct report. Next slide. So here's another example. So 2 days before a board meeting, members ask staff to prepare a report and put it to prepare an item to put it on consent. That staff report isn't shared with the other members. It's placed on consent. The director pulls the item and seeks to debate it. I think a couple of things to talk about here. I think first, want to make sure we're giving everyone adequate time to prepare items. I know we have policies on that, and so trying to slip in items at the last minute, doesn't make you very popular with staff, to be honest with you, or even more importantly, popular with the rest of the board. In addition, I think important to remember that we as staff take our obligation to provide information to all 5 of you very seriously. And so, we don't want to be caught in a position of being asked to pull a fast one or surprise your colleagues. Next slide. So some takeaways on the director, the role of the director versus the role of staff. Very different roles. So, directors, like we talked about, decide where we're going, and staff decides how we get there. And along those lines, would request that, you directors let staff, once the decision on policy has been made, implement that policy and not try to get involved into operational type decisions. Along the other lines, as staff, it's important that we respect the board's responsibility for determining where we're going. And so it is completely appropriate and probably expected for staff to provide recommendations on where to go based on their professional experience. That's why you have a professional staff. But shouldn't be crossing the line into, trying to set that policy or undermine that policy. Once the policy's been set by the boards, staff needs to work to accomplish it. Next slide. That's all I wanted to cover. Appreciate everyone sitting through it, and be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Josh?
Anybody have any questions for Josh?
Not for me. Thanks, Josh.
Thank
Not
you.
Thank you.
for me either.
Nor from me.
I'm good.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
That was great. Okay. Next up we have Ag-New-Beck Strategic Plan Special Workshop Update with Shauna Doherty.
For the record, we can see you now, so thank you to whoever fixed it.
Oh, is Ellen on the
She's
call?
online.
Oh, great.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Is this on? Yeah. Okay. Shauna Doherty, Senior Manager, Agnew Beck Consulting. Happy to be here. Purpose of my presentation tonight is just to give a 5 or 10 minute overview of the strategic planning process. Thank you, Josh, for that segue to this conversation. We'll work closely with Josh as we move forward. Next slide. As a reminder, and for any of those listening, we did a workshop with the board last spring, I believe, and started the conversation around board dynamics, training, future strategic planning, made a decision at that point, and there was an interim general manager, decided that there were too many moving parts going on at the district with the changeover of the GM and election cycle, that we would wait until after election and then come back and start the process with the new board that's going to be in place. So we're excited to be here. We started the process, as you know, starting some interviews this week with the board to help inform the design of that first workshop on February 8th. As a reminder, this is the overview of the strategic planning process. Our goal is to try to produce, with all of you, a strategic plan in the next 6 months. And I'll talk a little bit about that timeline. It's an ambitious timeline, but we're setting forth a design we think that sort of puts most of the workshops in the center of this process to just keep the heat on and keep the focus. And try to get through creating this sort of high level what, as Josh explains. So we started out with the get starting. We have a strategic core team. Thank you to Mary and Kat for serving on that, along with Rob and Lauren, and our consulting team. And that just sets, we work on that team to talk about the schedule, help with agenda setting, and keep shepherd the process through. The environmental scan and the SWOT analysis is pretty typical for strategic planning. With this organization, we're doing a variation of that and really looking mostly internally. So what are the guiding documents? What are other airports doing, or other special districts as far as creating strategic plans? Part of that is organizing the guiding documents with your help, staff and board interviews, and then rolling up that information and sort of themes and bringing that forward to area 4 and 5, which will be the 3 workshop series. Next slide. So our goals, and again, this will be updated as we speak to all of you, but based on our initial conversations with strategy team and staff and board last year, we want, and again, reflective of what Josh just talked about, a roadmap that outlines the priorities for the next 3 to 5 years, a process that creates a collective direction that can be shared both internally for staff to give them sort of a guide, and then externally for partners in the community to easily pick something up. Hopefully they walk into a board meeting like this and they can pick up the strategic plan while you are discussing something and understand how your topic fits into this plan that they hold in their hand, and it's easy to understand. We also hope that it's an enduring plan. So if you all choose to go and do other things, and that speaks to board and staff, that there's a document that is enduring and keeps the direction going without the humans that are here today. We always stress that it's a plan to define what you want to do, but also what you don't want to do. So I think that's the benefit of these plans. We hope that it creates some alignment and a team, that the process through the 3 workshops creates a sense of team. Next slide. This is the proposed timeline. Again, we are flexible and will adapt as needed, but we're proposing 3 sort of a three-phase. So the listen and learn is now, and then we're doing the workshops in February, March, and April, and then we'll draft the plan and bring it to you. The design that I put that little arrow down there for future outreach. So because we're trying to make this a pretty focused process, and with those 3 workshops in the center and then getting you a draft, the conversation that we've had so far at the strategy committee is to, if there is a decision on the board that you would like to take this draft out for public feedback or feedback with some of your partners and stakeholders here on the airport, you can certainly do that once you have a draft and you have something for them to react to. Next slide. So this hopefully is familiar to you. This is the framework that was used by Kelly and Rob in the budgeting process. I was in the room when it was first introduced and have been sort of talking to some of you about the effectiveness in sort of taking the chaos of all of the documents and all the information and all the different opinions and creating a framework for us to start laying out our priorities. We've sort of tested it with the budget process and it worked really well. And so we would like to carry this same framework forward and start to lay out the strategic plan using this framework. The mission is in the center. So again, similar to what Josh talked about, but this has specifically to do with the roles of the staff and the board in the strategic planning process. And we will continue to remind you of this, but again, we believe that you can get a strategic plan done in 6 months because it is really high level. It's, we're thinking 15 pages, lots of graphics, very high level. And especially with this group, we're not going to get to a nitty-gritty detail on a policy. It's got to be sort of a bucketed area. And then as actions come forward, there's a structure for those to fit into, and then you will have to continue to make those decisions and policy decisions. Again, staff's job is to operationalize and execute and add that detail. Next slide. So a little bit about what I'm trying to get all of you to start thinking about is not to worry so much about the workshops and what's going to be on those agendas, but really start to think about that end product and what does that end product look like, what's contained in it, what needs to be contained in it for you to support it. And then from there, let's design the 3 workshops so that we get the content that we need to build that plan. And so what I'm asking all of you to do, and we'll touch on this again at the workshop, is, when you come across strategic plans that you like, it doesn't have to be airport-based, but you found it easy to read, you found that it explained the policies and the priorities of that organization, you like the layout, please send those to us. Next slide. So these are just some examples of things that we started to look at. We're not wed to them. I'm just planting the seed to start looking at ideas. I will tell you, once again, there are not examples that exactly match this airport. You're very, very unusual. You cannot Google special district airport and come up with a set of great examples. So we're going to have to reach out and make some phone calls. A lot of airports just do master plans. They don't do strategic plans. So we're going to need to look beyond airports for those kinds of things. Next slide. So I started at the end, and now I'm going to go back to the beginning. So we're calling these inputs. So what is feeding this process? Like I said, we're working with staff and talking to all of you about sort of what are the documents that you pull up when you're thinking about making decisions or a decision is brought to you, and laying it out in that framework that I showed you earlier, and thinking through which documents can we now archive and let go, and maybe there's a few pieces of data but they're too old, and then let's have our 6 or 8 guiding documents that we can use as foundational to guide our policy making, and then where are the gaps? What are the missing pieces of information we need to help us inform those policy decisions? And I think that is part of what we're going to do at that first workshop, is just get clear on sort of what are those guiding documents that we feel help to inform our policy making. So past input, I think that means just input from board and staff, and we do plan to interview every single staff member, not just the directors or just the management staff, but all of staff. And then again, like I said, examples from other airports and special districts as far as the final product. And next slide. The series, the way we're sort of breaking down the series, a little bit will be revealed at workshop number 1, but we're planning on sort of setting that high-level agreements, and really agreements have to do with agreements around the process. I'm proposing, or we're proposing these things, but we want to revisit these at the workshop. Is 6 months good? Are these what we want to contain in it? And so talk a little bit about the process, and then guiding principles. Vision, we want to revisit. I know you recently did the mission, but working on a vision and core values, and then starting to lay out priorities for those 4 strategic focus areas. 2, we'll just start to refine it. It depends on what happens in 1. We might have to revisit some of 1, but 2, we'll focus on goals. Probably we'll have some information that we'll ask staff to pull together, some just sort of factual information to inform, again, the policy topic and conversation, and start to lay out priorities. Next slide. So February 8th is our workshop, 8 to 1, I believe, 9 to 1. And we'll make adjustments after that. We'll send you the agenda ahead of time and have further discussion. But I just wanted to have a chance today to come and get the ball rolling. I appreciate all of you signing up. I think we have everybody signed up other than Rick, which we'll schedule for interviews. So thanks so much. Any questions?
Sean, I had a quick question.
Oh.
On the workshops, were you thinking of having all 3 here?
Sir,
on
if you
site?
can use a microphone just so we capture that, and maybe borrow Lauren's here. Thanks, Mark.
Hi, Mark Lamb. Shauna, were you thinking of having all 3 workshops here on site, or possibly one off-site like in Tahoe City to bring in more of that community, or had you given thought to that topic?
Yeah, thanks. Good question. Workshop number 1 is going to be off-site, and our recommendation for that, with input from the strategy team, was it just gives the board an opportunity to be in a different space and feel more like a workshop and have more of an informal conversation around some of these larger topics. So first one is off-site, and we're not 100% sure about the other 2.
We got invitations to, it's Gravity House, right, for April and February.
Okay, so you're right. They're all 3 at Gravity House.
Oh, all 3 of them?
No.
Oh,
Sorry.
I didn't see them.
February and April.
Okay.
February and April.
March is here because it's on a board meeting day.
Oh,
Okay.
right. So Marshall.
Okay, so
here in the morning.
February and March off-site, and then back here for the last one.
And apologies to the lakeside. It's very, very difficult to find these spaces. We feel really lucky to find anything off-site. But obviously the public is welcome to come to these workshops, and they'll be posted.
Okay, anything else? Ellen, I'm not sure if you're on speaker. Oh, no questions?
I don't think those are questions, but I think all the directors have met me, and I appreciate being able to listen and continue to work with you.
Thank you.
Great. Any questions from Rick or Teresa or David?
Not for David.
Not from Rick.
And not from me.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna. Okay, action item number 7, award master lease agreements for airport engineering, general engineering services. Are you speaking? No, I didn't know if you had planned to present to us, but
maybe, yeah.
we do have a recommendation from
Yes, thanks, Kat. We do
Manager.
have a recommendation for both award of a general engineering services master service agreement and also a aviation engineering services agreement.
Recording in progress.
We just lost audio.
So let's try audio. Is that working all right?
There you go.
Okay, great. So we're recommending 2 master service agreement awards, one for general engineering and one for aviation specific engineering for the airport. The staff reports are in there along with supporting documentation. Happy to answer questions that the board might have, and welcome one of the 2 is here tonight if you have questions for Auerbach Engineering.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Rick.
I'd like to make a motion, then we can discuss it. I'd like to move to approve the awarding the engineering services master service agreement to Auerbach Engineering Corporation from February 1, 2023 through January 31, 2026 with 2 option years.
I'll second.
Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments? Is there any public comment? Oh, Wally.
I wasn't quite sure when to jump in there. Sorry,
This is fine.
I'll keep it really brief. Hi, Wally Auerbach with Auerbach Engineering. I just wanted to be here for a couple of reasons. First of all, to say thank you. We've really enjoyed our relationship with the airport for the last several years, and we really enjoy working with staff, and it's been a good experience for us. And we love solving problems, so this is a good place to do that. And also for a little bit of FaceTime. You know, it's been a couple of years. I'm not sure when the last board meeting I've came to, but it's good to be back. I also wanted to introduce Celeste Havener, who is our project engineer. She's on point for a lot of the airport work, and she's been engaging with staff. We had a good meeting today with staff to talk about a few upcoming things, so I just really wanted to say thank you and appreciate the business. Thanks.
Okay, is there any other public comment? I don't see any hands raised. Roll call.
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Stevens,
Yes?
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Rolfe.
Yes.
And the second one you have for consideration is the aviation engineering master service agreement.
I move to approve awarding the aviation engineering services master service agreement to Bradley Engineering, Inc. from February 1, 2023 through January 31st, 2026 with 2 option years.
I'll second it.
Okay, is there any public comment? All right, roll call.
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Stevens,
Yes?
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Mary Hetherington. Yes. Director Rolfe.
Yes. All right.
See, it's not so easy, is it?
Thank you for the good work, Wally. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, number 9, board committee assignments and ad hoc committee reports. We've all read them. Are there any highlights or any questions?
No.
Okay. Maybe, Rob, you could remind us what the next ACT meeting is and which
Yeah,
board
thank
members
you.
will attend?
asked Lauren to pull up the next ACT meeting date. It's Wednesday, I believe, 2 weeks from now, 6 p.m., 1800. The topic planned for that meeting is discussion of runway 220 reconstruction and the timelines and impact both the airfield and the community, and begin that discussion. We don't have the specific timelines today, but we generally know what that might look like, and so I want to begin discussing that in the various forums that we do have, so people begin to be more aware of it and what the impacts might be. So that's our topic for the ACT meeting in February.
Great.
Hey, Rob, I've got a question for you. Given that this is a pending issue before the board, might it be a good idea for the board to not participate in that meeting? You have the possibility of 2 directors in that meeting taking a position on this before it's actually heard in our official meeting.
Josh?
Josh say.
So I have the right guy sitting next to me.
Yeah, I was waiting to see if Rob wanted to jump in first. But, Director Diamond, I think if, the rules on something like this are not as strict as the rules would be if we were considering an appeal or a situation that uniquely affected a person. So if 2 directors decide to attend the ACT meeting, I'm okay with it. I would just ask that those 2 directors be thoughtful in their comments during the ACT meeting and not commit themselves to absolute yes or an absolute no on an issue that would come before the board for a vote.
Okay, does anybody have any desire to attend, board members?
I will.
You'd like to attend? Anybody else? Rick probably has LAFCO.
I have LAFCO at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Do you want to do it, or
I mean, I would definitely like to do it unless you want to do it.
why don't you do that?
Okay, I'll do it. That's the same day as our workshop, right? The 8th? Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Management team reports. Rob, why don't you go first? Any highlights we've all read?
Sure, thank you. In your packet and for the public's consumption, the first item on there is what Kelly Wu worked on with various folks here, and that is a summary document of our 2023 budget that's included. It's linked there, it's included in the budget materials, and the board's seen it now. It really came out great working with an outside firm to really create a document that is very digestible, easy to read, orient towards, to understand where the priorities are for the board of directors and for the district for this year that we are in now, our fiscal year, the calendar year. So I would just encourage folks to take a look at that. It's a little bit different than past years, but it does follow with the budget presentation that was presented to the board and was approved.
Does anybody have any comments? Any comments from the board on the packet that was put together? I really like it, just as an aside. I like that there are links and it's easy to find documents, because otherwise it's not always easy to find.
Additionally, just as a reminder, we have a new director of aviation starting on the 30th this month, just this next week, and we're excited to get Jeff on board here and add his skill set to the team and continue to move forward on some areas that that we've not made as much progress on, not having a person in that position. There are some attached additional reports that are there for you that I'll let individuals that are here talk about those reports, whether it's Mark Lamb or Kelly Wu. Additionally, we have updated the master fee schedule as of the 1st of this month. There are various updates that I outline in my report there across the different types of fees and services that we do offer here. And these are all in keeping with the idea of the budget direction for this year of moving closer to market rates and trying to capture the true cost of our activities here We've all experienced just this last month of a lot of snow removal, a lot of hours of staff. The real cost of operating at this altitude in this environment, we're trying to match our pricing, our charges closer to what our actual costs are to provide these services. So in some areas, I would say, have received a lot of attention over the years. There are other areas that maybe are behind that, and we're trying to bring those up to closer to a market condition. And so we do see some of those being adjusted here at the first of the year, including moving our sustainable aviation fuel offering up to 50% for the next 6 months as part of our Jet A fuel services here to our aviation community.
I have some rates and fees questions when that time comes.
Let's
do it.
I'm prepared.
Okay, so on the overnight fees seem to be adjusted by dollar amounts instead of percentages. And if I look at the percentages on this puts the burden on operators of the smaller aircraft. The under 5,500 pounds overnight fee is up 25%. And then that scales up to the 20,000 to 50,000 pound, which is up 0%. Over 50 is 2%. But then the numbers increase, or excuse me, the numbers decrease as the size of the aircraft goes up. So as a matter of percentages, I'm concerned that that is being borne more on the operators of the smaller aircraft than the larger aircraft, which is just a concern of mine that, maybe it would be better if we were looking at increases as a percentage across the board rather than specific dollar figures. That's one thing. And the other thing is I just wanted to make public, we did get a public comment from a man named Matthew Kaufman, who was asking about the annual auto parking permit thing. And I just wondered if that going from 500 to 2,000, if we could, because he did make that comment, if we could speak to how we came to that number, just so that we have some clarity on the process that we're using to determine these things. That's it.
Any other comments or questions on that before I dive into those? So let me take the second one first and the first one second, if I can. Looking at the parking, auto parking, I believe you're talking about fees and rates. Looking at what we're trying to move towards, we're talking about long-term parking specifically. The nightly rate hasn't gone up since October, I believe, is the same rate we had then. But what we've looked at is the time of staff to manage and monitor and provide snow removal clearance to our long-term parking lot that's not gated, that's not controlled, other than people walking in voluntarily to pay a fee and obtain a permit to park in a long-term lot. There's a lot of staff time and effort involved in that, and to manage daily that activity that's going on there. I think the rates that we're charging, had been charging in the past, were so significantly undervalued compared to the cost of actually doing those activities that, in looking at it, it didn't seem appropriate to try to incrementally increase those by a small CPI. We looked at it more of what our true cost was to have the staff time and effort daily, twice daily, issuing the permits, checking the lots, putting boots on vehicles that were there without permits, moving snow off that lot on a regular basis, as I mentioned earlier. Those all kind of factoring into an equation of what we thought a more appropriate charge for that service offering would be. And that's how we got to more of an annual rate and also still offering a monthly rate and a nightly rate if folks still chose those options. Before we got to the point where we were able to install a gate and an online payment system that would reduce our staff time out there constantly monitoring that lot. Of course, we'll still have the snow removal requirements there and the maintenance of the lot itself over time. When we looked at that comparative, the market around the area, for example, the same type of surface lot parking at an airport at Reno Airport is more than twice the price for an annual rate at that airport. So while it is a significant increase from what it was, I think it was so underpriced that I couldn't even begin to lay out a 10-year horizon of slowly, incrementally trying to increase that rate to get to a market rate. I think we needed to address that immediately, and this begins to address that, where we move towards and better capture our true fully loaded costs of the staff and time involved in maintaining a long-term parking lot that's currently still uncontrolled. So it's very expensive right now. So that was some of the thought process behind moving towards that rate and having a little bit of round numbers on that rate, and still offering a 3-tiered rate of daily, monthly, and annual for the long-term parking lot. We are sending out communications to the community, folks that we know that we have information on. An email just went out this day or two ago with some more details on that, keeping people informed of that. I hope that answers some of your questions along that. On the other first question, it was on who's bearing the brunt of the overnight parking fee on the ramp, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Looking at the parking fees, I believe these are the same fees that we established this past October 1st. And looking at them and working with our consultants about fee charges based on aircraft weight, and for the ramp, it's not as much of weight as by size. We're looking at actually how much room they take up on the ramp for overnight. And there is an incrementally increased charge for the larger aircraft, larger wingspan that take up a larger ramp area. It's not an exact percentage match though, right?
Yeah, it was just the percentage for each class. It's like, for example, under 55 is 25%. From 55 to 84.99, it drops down to 11% increase. The next category drops to 8% increase. The next category goes to 3.4% increase. That was what I was addressing. So maybe if it was a percentage increase on these, when we're talking about aircraft class differences, it might be more equitable across the board. Because as you said, we're not accounting for a $50,000 Cessna 152 taking up approximately the same space as $1 million Cirrus. We're not accounting for that in the fees that we charge. So I do feel kind of like if we standardized on something and then just moved it as a matter of percentages, that might be fairer to everybody.
So I think you'll find the opposite is true in our methodology with the landing fee, and we look at the gross max takeoff weight for those and the impact on our operations here. The reverse, I would say, is probably true from what you were just stating. I hear what you're saying, David. It was not an exact formula applied evenly to all, but an incremental increase in fairly small numbers, I think. Yeah, and they are the same as they were in October. Thanks for verifying that, Kelly. So those didn't increase at the first of the year. Those are the same ones we had set this past October, based on our consultants' feedback and working with Vector on setting the overall rates for landing fee, ramp fee, and overnight parking fees, which is also related to the FBO study that was done, I believe, about a year ago that recommended rates based on market.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, anybody else before me? Or?
Go ahead, Mary.
Well, I just, as he said that, then I just ran the numbers, right now. And there is something to be said for, going from 16 to 20 bucks. It's not a big hit, I guess, but it is a 25% bump, going from 20, and then And it just looks like these were all just rounded up to the even dollar figure. And going from $27 to $30 on the 5,500 to 84.99, and 37 to 40, 58 to 60, 80 staying at 80 for the 20 to 50,000 pound, which that seems like we get a lot of those. And then going from 186 to 190, that's only a 2% increase. It would seem like it would make more sense to go to an average of 10% on everybody and then round up to a nice even number. It's a valid point that, you know, because I guess the argument would be that the landing fees, which is done at other airports, is all tied to pavement on the runway and on the taxiways and maintaining that, whereas an overnight fee is tied to on ramp and that pavement, and the heavies are typically given the space in front of the building as compared to, you know, I don't even ever see anybody on the jet ramp that was built specifically for jets, unless I'm missing something. I don't know, I think there's some validity in what he's saying, and I'm curious what the other board members say.
Yeah, I think this is, I definitely want to hear that. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say, aren't we coming up to market? Don't we have a study on this?
We do.
Is that how we got here?
We have an FBO study, and we recently just finished working with our vendor to implement the landing fee, providing us guidance on market as well.
Actually, I have it here.
So are we adjusting to market? Is that each line item that we're talking about?
Aircraft parking.
Rob?
Go ahead, Kelly, if you want to add something on there. I think it's a combination of both taking off decimal points and rounding to whole numbers, and also moving to market. I think it's a combination of both those things happening.
This is the...
Sorry. Where David says one goes up 25% and one's up 4%. Is that because one was far out of line and one was not so far out of line?
In 2022, we took everything up 10% when we went through the master fee schedule in 2021. So everything got a blanket 10%. In 2023, we didn't increase anything. All we did was round. So that's why you only see a few dollars. We just took it to the next round number.
Okay, I don't have it in front of me because I don't have another screen besides this one. But David's saying one is going up 25%. That's not just a rounding issue, right?
Well, from 16 to 20. It just works out.
The dollars are small, so it is.
Oh, got it.
And I think
That's how the percentages roll.
Talking about
yeah.
small numbers, but big percentages, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think where that might play in is that, I don't have numbers on this, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. My guess is that the people who wanted the monthly pass that's no longer available were likely to be in that 5,500 or less category. So now the cost of having an airplane here per month has gone up 25% for them. That's a lot of money on a monthly basis. That was kind of where I was. If you think, okay, it used to be 16 bucks overnight, now it's 20 bucks overnight. That's not a big deal. If you think about, you know, a $25 million airplane sitting on the ramp and its overnight went up $4 or $5, that's also not a big deal. But my guess is that those aircraft are not, you know, they're, when we think of the percentages though, if it's affecting their longer term parking, it's not terribly significant, but it is significant for those smaller aircraft on that scaling of multiple months on end. That was just my point. I'm not going to argue.
I think to me, the bigger issue is that we have a limited ramp space that's in high demand, and we've been charging fairly under market for these products. And we're trying to increase that based on guidance of coming to market. We're offering products. We're talking about people for aircraft overnight parking passes that were offered in the past. I think it's 2 individuals who took up the annual pass as an opportunity, which was a screaming deal for the ramp space here and to park at their accommodation all year long. We also had folks that came somewhat on a seasonal basis, typically the summer season. About 40 aircraft were in that population that were here for multiple months. So looking at that, we're not talking about, we're talking about pretty small numbers of people who have taken advantage of the past programs and pricing that has been offered and tried to offer products that align with the utilization that we see and the demand, and with a reasonable price point on those, knowing that we have considerable staff time and effort in the past, monitoring, ticketing, overnight aircraft that come up or don't come up. The pilots or the operators come up to Unicom to pay the fee, or if they don't, we have to go ticket their plane and then chase them down for the payment, right? For overnight or for a weekly. This is a lot of time involved in the processing. So coming up with a more simple process where we offer an overnight rate that's an annual pass for those folks that's priced similar to the length of time they are already staying anyways for multiple months. So of those 40 folks that were staying multiple months, the annual pass is priced very similarly to what they were paying. So it doesn't feel like a very large increase for those folks. But the staff time reduction on chasing those folks down and turning the overnight billing system over to Vector to bill and collect on, removing staff time to do that, is a tremendous savings for us in the district.
When Teresa asked about, didn't we just do a rent study? And I brought that file along for other things that might have come up tonight. And I just was like, yeah, you're right. So this study was done December 20th, 2021. And for single engine, overnight parking tie down ranged from $5 minimum to $45 maximum. Multi-engine ranged from $7 to $95. Turboprop light jet ranged from $50 to $100. And jet range from $60 to $235. This is in their AMCG. They have access to a lot of information that's not necessarily public. So I guess given this number, that it might be something that you might want to go back and look at. You know, we just bumped them. Maybe we don't bump them right away, but within, I would suggest we look at that, because this is already over a year old. And we were under market in every case. And it wasn't just rounding it up, we were under market in every case.
Yeah, that's my perception, is we continue to be under market. And so I'm trying to move us closer to market, but not be a shock in doing that, and offering different product offerings.
But these ranges are significantly more than just rounding up.
Plus the 10%. Because, right, we did the 10% last year.
Well,
And then rounded
I
up.
always, see, that's why I carry all my paper around. So,
And what does Vector charge? They charge a percentage, or?
well, they don't, does Vector do the tie-down fees?
They are now, yes.
Okay, that's good.
They have a, per contract, they are charging us a fee to process this.
Okay.
Yes.
So
if we can get folks that we know they're in a long-term situation that we process, then we do save some money doing that. That's part of the psychology behind this, why we turn the overnight ones over. So I would just reemphasize, there is some thought process behind the master fee schedule increases. It's not arbitrary. This is one of those things in the primary management compliance documents the board has delegated to the general manager to do. I last updated it 1 October. I've updated it again in different areas, 1 January this year. I'm sure we will continue to revisit it and continue to look at the market studies that we have or may acquire in the future. But overall, I would say we are moving in a direction with the landing fee, with the ramp fee, with the overnight tie-down fees, closer to market. Same with our fuel fees.
That's great.
So I think we're moving in the right direction. It's just, how fast do we want to step on the accelerator? I think that's a nuance that I'm trying to find the right balance on.
And in terms of the January 1, 2022 rates and fees are the same as the October 1, 21, 22 for the tie-down. They did not change between January and October. So this 10% did not happen.
The 10% happens January 1st, 2022 is my understanding from the previous year. They went up 10%.
Okay,
Since I've been here, I've only adjusted the rates and fees and the master fee schedule twice, once on 1 October and the second time on 1 January this year.
Okay.
I think this is the direction we gave Rob, is to do the studies and move it up to market. I've heard a lot of, let's move it up to market. So let's keep the job going.
And that's all I had on my report, and I'll defer to either Mark on his AVCOM report, communications report, if you have any highlights you want to talk about, Mark.
I have one other comment. I have
Oh,
one,
we have public comment.
and I have one other comment on
A
this.
director comment.
Is that we did this breakout years ago. We didn't even used to do this breakout. And it went to, and so now we have a breakout of, 0 to 5,500, 55 to 8,499, 8,500 to 12,499, 12,500 to 19,999, 20, and then greater than 50,000 pounds. We're starting to see a lot more of the even bigger aircraft, the G5s that are 75,000 plus. And I think I would like to see Category 6 that is a Type 6 greater than 75,000. So it'd be 50,000 to 74,999, and then greater. And I'm going to request it to show up in here in the rates and fees, as well as that question will come up again in terms of the noise operations and comments. I think that we need to see that other breakout as we get more and more of these larger aircraft. We used to have one or two, and I can even name the people, but we're starting to see even more and more, and we're getting a lot of comments related to the larger aircraft.
So I'm always happy to take board guidance. Right now, the rates that we have and the type aircraft fit with the feedback and the conversations we've had with outside consultants on standard groupings of weight classes and charges. I'd be inclined to be consistent and stay with those. We certainly are capturing the actual operations in and out of the airport and separate reporting to look at those different types of aircraft and their weight classes. Adding a rates and fees, certainly something we can do and we can continue to look at, but I'm happy to take board direction on that.
How do board members feel about that proposal?
My thought on it is if the data that, and I'm not entirely clear on exactly what data Vector is collecting, but between Vector's data and the runway utilization survey data, if by the end of Q1 we actually do see a significant number of aircraft in that class, I don't see why we wouldn't adjust. If it's a trend that we're going toward that, then probably we should account for it. But I'd like to see the data support it.
Okay, Teresa?
I think we could grind this and define us if we keep going down that path. We pick every different kind of aircraft and debate the impact. I'm not opposed, but you gotta stop the madness somewhere. And I don't know how much that would be. Like, I don't have the, like I said, this is the only screen I have, so I don't know how much we're talking about, but I don't feel strong either way, other than you just have to stop the madness in some way.
Rick? Oh, you're muted. There you go.
What did he say?
Said proceed.
I said proceed.
Proceed.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
So you're agreeing to start collecting the data on aircraft greater than 75,000?
Yeah, but I also want to implement this fee study,
Right.
Yeah,
or this fee proposal.
right. So that wouldn't get in the way of it. I think what David had suggested, and I agree with, is let's look at some data coming in with whether, maybe not just one quarter, maybe a couple of quarters, so we get into, busier season and decide if the data supports restructuring the fees.
We have the data that shows that the numbers are increasing.
Fine with data, but I don't think you should be doing it in the spring. I mean, you can look at the data in the spring, but you should look, when things pick up.
The other aspect is that our runway 1129 is rated as a 50,000-pound single wheel, 80,000-pound dual wheel. And we should have an idea of the number of aircraft above 75,000 because they have a bigger impact on the pavement. And I'm all about protecting our pavement. And we can accept some aircraft that weigh more than 80,000 pounds. And this is all tied to the deflectometer test that was done by Brandley Associates to determine what it is, what it's capable of handling. And if we do not have numbers that show that we're getting a lot more of those 80,000-pound aircraft, and those are having a significant impact on the pavement, if they're just grouped with 50,000, we don't know. And we should know. That's why I think we need to determine, and we have some of this that was gathered during the master plan that shows how these numbers are increasing. And I think that it's not, if Vector's collecting the data, it's not that big a deal to put one more brake line in. And they can get the same rates and fees as the 50,000 pound now, but we should know the numbers.
Agreed. Do you have what you need as far as direction?
We'll continue to study the numbers and report on those monthly, the runway utilization and the type and style of aircraft that are coming and going. Those are things that we're doing now, and we'll continue to do that and report that. So that's the direction I'm taking right now. I know it's not an agenda item here today to change the master fee schedule or add a new rate on there. So I wouldn't be doing that per se, but I certainly will continue to present information monthly about runway utilization and type of aircraft and the information that we do have, and share that with the board of directors so we're all aware of what the business activity looks like here at the airfield for different types and styles of aircraft. Absolutely. Right now I think we're talking about really small numbers, but yeah.
Is there any public comment on the rates and fees schedule?
Yes.
Oh, who do we have?
Matthew Kaufman. I sent the email and I have public comment that I'd like to make at this time.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I keep hearing market. And I'll say from the airports I travel to, Napa and Minden and Reed Hillview and San Jose, 20 is a little high. It's not crazy, okay? $20 for a light aircraft per night. It's not crazy. It's a little higher, but it's not crazy. So my home airport, Watsonville, charges 10, Placerville charges 8, Minden charges 15, Reed Hillview charges 12. The real gotcha is the monthly. All of those airports offer a significant discount for a monthly parking and a tie down, but that's going away. And so the monthly parking at Watsonville is 92, at Placerville it's 66, at Minden it's 75, and at Reed Hillview, right outside of San Jose, monthly parking's 163. And yours will be 600 because you're eliminating that monthly. Okay, that's insane. $600 a month to park compared to 163 to park my plane in San Jose for a month is insanely high. And that will mean that my trips and other trips from the Bay Area pilots are not going to be come up and spend a week. They're going to be come up and spend as few days as possible so we can get our planes out of there as quickly as possible. And I don't think that's good for Truckee and its surroundings. With regard to the parking rates, I understand your parking lot's expensive to run, but South Lake Tahoe, $28 a month for for monthly parking. Minden, $50 a month. Placerville, $30 a month. My home airport, Watsonville, $75 a month. Reed Hillview in San Jose, $78 a month. And again, your new monthly fee for parking an automobile will be $600 a month. So that's 10 times the price for my car parked for a month at your airport instead of at Reed Hillview in San Jose. And it's, it's at least, didn't do the math here, but 163 to 600 is a lot for the monthly. I just feel it's way too high. What you're doing is you are pricing yourself out of general aviation, small general aviation, coming up to visit for more than 1 or 2 days, and you are pricing yourself out of general aviation leaving vehicles at your airport. If you don't want vehicles at your airport, okay, but that's what's going to happen. I don't think that's a net positive for your revenue, no matter how much staff time it is. And if you don't want small general aviation coming up to your airport for more than a night or two, I guess that's okay, but I don't think that's good for Truckee. And I speak as I currently live in Santa Cruz County, but after my home burned in Santa Cruz County some years ago, I did live in Placer County, right near the airport, for several years. So I've lived in both places. I feel strongly about the airports at both ends. So I think on the monthly tie down, yeah, there's only 40 people using it, but those 40 people are going from paying, I forget what it was, 65 or 95 or something, to 600. That's, you're not going to have all 40 of them. You're going to have 0.
Thank you, Matthew. Is there any other public comment? Jonathan?
Yeah, I want to thank Matthew for his comments. I'm also a commuter, dividing my time between Placer County and San Mateo County, and both the monthly increase as well as the tie-down increases, it seems high. So I want to thank Matthew for his comments. That's all.
Thank you. Anybody else on the Zoom call?
Kat, if I could just add one more thing to this.
Sure.
Anybody who's heard me for the last few years knows that I am about I want things to be fair. And in many cases, we undercharge and have been undercharging radically for a lot of services. What my concern is that we were very, very sensitive when negotiating with our vendors to step them up to market value. And when we're talking about fees, it seems like we're less concerned about that. And what my concern is about this, and this sort of reflects something that Matthew had said, I as a general aviation pilot flying an aircraft under 5,500, well under 5,500 pounds, also start to see some of these actions as becoming little inch by inch steps toward turning Truckee into a jet port that is not friendly to the local kind of single engine, regular folk kind of aviators. We saw this happen with San Jose, and we've seen it happen in other areas where it just you just can't fly there anymore because they charge so much just to land the aircraft, and it's only because they don't want you there. They'd rather have the multi-million-dollar jets there where they can make a fortune from that. And my concern about some of the things we've discussed, and when I see little things like this, is just it feels like without really recognizing we're doing it, that we might be pushing our airport in that direction. I hope that's not what our airport becomes. I guess maybe we can talk about this in the strategic plan. But these particular increases, as I mentioned, Matthew mentioned that, losing the monthly fee and then seeing that fee go up to $600, $20, going from $16 to $20, this is not going to break the bank for a piston pilot. We think about percentages, it's an issue. But then, like I said, and what Matthew said, then when you take that overnight fee and multiply it times 30 days, it becomes a lot of money. And that is, it's a significant thing. And I feel like that maybe if we see those bigger increases justified, that maybe as we did with vendors, we might want to think about phasing some cost adjustments in rather than just hitting them at the onset full blast. Sorry, my brain's not super functional, but just wanted to say that.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think that's definitely high on our list of strategic plan discussions is what we want to see in the future. But anybody else have anything? Okay. Moving on, I think Kelly? Oh, no, Mark. Is it Mark?
Communications?
Yes.
Happy to answer any questions.
Oh, yes, everyone's read it. Does anyone have any questions for Mark?
Again, this is there's a reference in here to bringing in the C-130J, and I think that's a cool option for people in the community to come and look at it. I just am bringing up the point that its empty weight is 75,562 pounds. Its max takeoff weight is 155,000 pounds. I'm into the pavement, and its wingspan is 132 feet, and our pavement, our runway is 100 foot wide. So I think it's cool. I think that, but I'm really concerned about that weight. I think there's other aircraft that could come in that do not weigh that much, that could still be a cool steam outreach.
Yeah, I think that particular one was a result of conversations the board had around the air show and wanting a year-round STEM kind of program. And it was our effort to bring something in and have a series of programs around it involving existing EAA, the Civil Air Patrol, other groups that are associated already with the airport and aviation, to give them the opportunity to have some lectures, tour an aircraft, have a good experience with the C-130. It was great. It was canceled because of weather at the time. C-130s are a little different than other aircraft that come in here. They do have 8 tires in the back, Mary, not just 4. So their dispersion of their weight is considerably different than the typical Gulfstream or other type of aircraft that has the same pound per square inch impact on the runway pavement.
Is
So
that
that's something that's, and depending on the inflation rate of the tires, there's a lot of factors there. And certainly those pilots are skilled in flying at altitude. I don't think they would be coming in at any kind of max weight. They're coming in at an appropriate weight here to operate effectively.
And to get out of here, I would just ask if you would talk with Brandley, because they've got the computer program to run it through, and just see what that equivalent operating hours are.
I've talked with Brandley about it. We've looked at the pavement management around this, and I think there's no one issue with an aircraft of that size, particularly a C-130 landing here. If it's doing it every day, that's a different story, and that's not what we've proposed at all. A quarterly basis based around a STEM education program is what we were pursuing, and that's very different than a daily in and out of that size of aircraft and that weight.
And yeah, and actually what was so surprising with Brandley when we did the length and load bearing study back when, is that the landing is not where the weight is felt, it's on the takeoff. And that was a surprise to me, because, you know, you think, well, when it's landing, but when it's landing, it still has air under the wings. But when it's taking off is when the pavement feels the weight. So that's just something. And then the fact that 16, 17 feet of the wing, of each wing, is going to extend past our pavement. And is there anything that we have vertically that could be an issue?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the question is here. Certainly those pilots are operating in a very known condition. Unless the snowbanks get really high, they certainly can operate at the airfield.
Okay. I'm just...
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought it up. It's interesting. Are there any specific questions about Mark's communications report or public comment?
I have to say, I kind of always enjoy, especially the end of the year, it's kind of like a statistician's report, but it's kind of a little bit esoteric. It's not aviation strictly, and there's some cool data in there, I think. You know, what kind of traffic we're getting, what kind of traffic on the website, you know, totals for how we interact with the community, how many times we interacted with the community, our agency partnership programs, you know, kind of seeing it all in a short report is kind of interesting, I think.
Nice job. Thank you.
In terms of we skipped over, are we going to do?
Yes, we are. I'm sorry, we did skip over. Okay, David Van Quest, I think, is on the Zoom. Does anybody have any questions for David on his operations report?
Oh, me again?
Yeah, it's you.
Okay. This is Vector, this is an estimated 5537 touch and goes, and I assume this number will get better now because Vector, I assume that's half and half.
That number is still 35% of our single engine piston aircraft. I've taken a look at what Vector has had as touch and go operations and compare that to like what our tower is counting and like 35%. It's still, it's not near what the tower is counting for touch and go. So for now, I'm just going to use 35%.
Okay.
Like we've been using.
But will Vector have a hard number, a real number? Through the cameras, or no? It's still going to just...
It could. When we pull the data, there's a column that says, is this touch and go? Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, in theory, we could try it.
Okay.
It's significantly less than what tower has been counting, the 35%.
Okay. So we can get that tighter. Okay. The next line about the September 5th, Labor Day, was the busiest day of the year with 313 operations. Just for fun, I took that over 14 hours, and that was 2.7, one aircraft operation every 2.7 minutes. That's a lot. It is a lot. Yeah, just that acknowledgement that if you live off the end of a runway, and every 3 minutes you have one coming in or one taken off, that's hard to live with. I was curious about the voluntary curfew, the Black Hawk helicopter. Why did they land, or were they just overhead? What was that about, David?
Yeah, that was a Black Hawk that was just passing through our airspace around 6:30 in the morning.
No, this is 1 a.m.
That wasn't a Black Hawk at 1 a.m.
That's okay. Okay.
There were two operations in the 1 o'clock hour. That wasn't a helicopter. That was, I think it was like a twin engine piston aircraft.
And just
that landed and then departed.
Probably dropping someone. Okay. Okay. And there were 5 departures between the 5 and 6 a.m. Again, that's something to note. The other thing here now is, and in the overall comments, you have, change from 2020 to 20 and change from 20 to 21. I went back and looked at using your other big spreadsheets. From 2018, there were, in the jet 12.5 to 19.9, there was 1751 in 2018. And now there's 2168. That is a 24% increase. That's significant. Jet greater than 50,000 pound, again, it went from 296 in 2018 to 412. So unless you're looking at a longer time frame, if you just look 2 years, it's a whole different thing than to say 24% increase or a 39% increase is significant, and people feel that. The other thing is, and again, this is where I would like to see that grade jets greater than 75,000 pound. With Vector, we should be able to do this, just break out. It's not a big deal to start breaking out jets greater than jets, just like we're breaking out those other increments. I would like to see jet 50 to 74,999, and then jets greater than 75. And then here in the commercial operators, do we link these operators to comments the top 5 commercial operators, do we link these operators to comments?
Good.
We could.
Yeah, every comment has a tail number attached to it. We know what tails operate with each of these commercial operators, so that's possible.
I think that would be, let's see, we go, Mountain Lion had 1,000 more operations almost than the next highest one. And, it would be interesting to know how these number of comments, then they run several different planes. I think that would be more interesting for us to know than the top 5 region origins. So I would offer that for board analysis.
I would agree with that. I would like to know if we have any kind of adverse trends with regard to our commercial operators and the comments that they're generating. I think that's worth knowing.
Teresa?
I'm thinking about it. I think it's always good to know, but to what end? Like, what are we going to do with that info? If we're spending resources to drill down on it, what are we going to do with it?
I think we could either talk to them about correcting it or thank them for their efforts to correct it if the trend is going downward. But I mean, they're our partners, business partners, and we're, collectively impacting the community. I think that might be a good opportunity for us to kind of hone in some of this stuff. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to name names of vendors, but some vendors where we've had great cooperation in that regard, and some where we've not had great cooperation. I think it would be good to kind of know at least what those trends are.
Is it a big undertaking?
Not necessarily.
Then let's do it.
Rick?
Sorry, no comment.
Okay, so what we're proposing is
That
we've already talked about capturing the bigger aircraft than the numbers,
75,000.
right?
Another.
And then what you're proposing is linking tail numbers to our commercial operators to see, with comments.
Yeah, I think,
No, I'm not.
I think what
I'm
we're
not.
really
I
getting
can-
into is staff work here. And Josh, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, I was just going to mention, I think we're also getting a little bit outside of the agenda for this item. I mean, this is a staff report, and it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to have a little bit of discussion, but this is starting to get into direction and potentially a decision.
I think what helps shape this as we get into the strategic plan work is what does the board really want to know? What information helps you inform decisions? What can we generate to help fuel that need for knowledge in order to drive decisions, in order to drive our work and what we're doing? I think we've skipped over all that, and now we're diving deep into what exactly a staff report should say. And I think we're kind of flipping that backwards. We should have a strategic plan and a vision and understand where the board as a whole wants to go, what information you need. We don't have that right now, right? So now we're just into staff work and fine tuning what staff reports are written as. And so I think if we could get the strategic plan in place and understand what the whole board's guidance is on these things, and what information you would like to know and how that will help drive decision-making, that would be more useful for me to provide the information you all want. Otherwise, we'll be in this meeting every month going in a drill down micro level about what one or two directors would like to see for information. It may not represent what is the strategic direction of the board.
Well, I think it goes back to Josh's presentation. Our job is to make policy. And your job, I mean, if you think the staff report, this is how I see it, if you think the staff report doesn't contain enough information, then you direct your staff to do things differently. So
I disagree. If we're directing policy that is based on community impact, we need to understand that community impact. I happen to think DEQ's report is awesome, and I think one of the reasons it's awesome is because we have contributed ideas to it over the years. And an idea was just contributed, he just said, which was not a big deal for him. I would hate to see us lose that, that opportunity to fine tune these things. I mean, if
Yeah, but Dave, if I can, I mean, you've skipped 3 levels of management and going direct to an individual employee here and asking them to produce a different report without any feedback from the 3 levels of management that are involved in this process.
And now we're really outside of the agenda
Yeah.
item for this
Yeah.
one, so I'd request that.
Another thing we can chew on in strategic plan. Yep.
If we do, I'd be really happy about that.
Yeah, well, I think it's a lot broader. I think we can have these conversations without veering from the agenda that we're trying to get through tonight. But I think it's a good conversation, and I appreciate the points that everybody brought up. Okay, is there any public comment on the operations? Okay. Let's move on to finance and administration report. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Kelly? Any highlights, Kelly, besides what you put in your report?
As I wrote in there, this is kind of the preliminary close for the year. Was on the phone, had a call today with our auditors. They're going to come up and do their field work actually in person this year for the first time since I started, which is exciting. At the end of February through the first couple of days of March. And we're shooting to have everything final in the audit presentation at the March board meeting.
Great. Awesome. All right, any questions? Public comment? Okay. All right. Future agenda priorities and meeting management. Anything to add, Rob?
No, nothing to add.
Okay.
Thank you.
Director Stevens, thank you for taking the time from your grueling Maui trip to write a report. Do you have anything to add? I appreciate you going.
I thought the conference was really good. I made a real good connection with an FAA official who made some inquiries on our effort on our land exchange. We also got to witness live the entire air traffic control system go down. And the guy who was in charge of it was there, hadn't slept all night. They were crashing, so they put the backup in and it started crashing. So they shut the whole thing down and restarted it about 3 in the morning, got things up again, messed up flights on the East Coast. It's pretty appalling how bad a shape it's in. But, you know, I listed just bullet point ideas of, and things that I heard, things like this, and I attached it, so I'm happy to answer questions or whatever. I also listed where the Aviation Issues Conference is going to be the next 3 years. I will not be attending any of those, just in case somebody's looking at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Okay, meeting review and direction to staff. Got everything you need?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
Could you go through those points for us so we're all clear what the meeting review, what those takeaways you have?
The points I have are in closed session. I won't repeat now,
Okay.
which is the bulk of my work going forward here. Other than that, there were various feedback on a variety of different items that didn't necessarily have board consensus, but are areas that we'll certainly look at to continue to improve our staff reports for the board's information.
Great.
3 people is not saying do it.
Board member announcements. Does anybody have any announcements? Nope. All right. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Do we have to do roll call? Yes.
Yes.
Director Diamond. Director Stevens.
Yes.
Director Odette.
Yes.
Director Heatherington.
Yes.
Director Rolfe.
Yes.